guys already? I'm ready.
Alrighty. I'd like to call this meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to order, and we could start with a roll call.
Aaron Angel?
Here.
Scott Conway?
Here.
Thomas Davis?
Here.
Paige Lewis?
Here.
Sam Libby is not. Nicholas Novello?
Here.
Dan Olson?
Here.
And Council Liaison Tim Waters is not here. Oh, we don't have Dan. Okay, we're done.
Okay, great. Now we'll move to approval of the agenda. Are there any proposed amendments to the agenda? Okay, if there aren't any, I would appreciate a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Need a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Great. The agenda is approved. So let's move to the previous month's minutes. Does anyone have any proposed edits to the previous month's minutes? If not, again, we can take a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll move to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you. Second? Scott? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. So we'll go next to public invited to be heard. Do you have a sign-in?
No one had signed in last I checked.
Does anyone want to speak?
Dan, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, sir, I'm good, thank you very much.
Nothing kind of class.
Great.
That's a first.
Oh!
All right. Moving right
I
along.
have a knife in his thigh here. Is that good?
Okay. Next agenda item is old business, and first up is the Button Rock Management Plan update. Okay.
Did everyone was able to open the documents to listen?
Yeah.
So what I have is a presentation that has a lot of slides in it, but I'm gonna go through it rather fast because it's similar to what's in the plan. It's kind of just a summary of what's in the plan and what you've read, so that's what we're gonna do first.
What is our input, hope, or what do you expect from us?
Questions and conversation and anything.
And when does this go to city council?
March 14th.
And when does our water board see it already?
No, you're the first board to see it. Sustainability board is this Wednesday, but however, they're not, because their request was a letter of support. So they will or won't sign a letter of support.
So whose request? The city council
No,
of sustainability?
Sustainability Advisory Board meets this Wednesday. They don't have time in their agenda for me to be here and do what I'm doing right now, which is this, and then all of that. So they've requested that they will show their support or not for the Button Rock Management Plan adopting, council adopting it by signing a letter of support.
And should we be thinking along those lines? What
No,
do you?
no, because your recommendations are gonna come after your discussion and,
So-
you can do what you always do. They just don't have time for this piece
Gotcha,
and for me to come and spend 20 minutes in their meetings. They have too many other topics.
right.
That's why it's a different, little bit of format, but then water board meets on the 27th, and it'll be the same format as we're doing here.
Yeah, so if you want to take action to recommend it go to council and be approved, you can certainly do that tonight, and I think
That's what
sometime.
That was asking,
Yes.
so you're hoping,
That's our
Paige,
hope,
that
right?
we do,
Yes.
yay, we like it, or we like it except for this part, or we hate it, or whatever it
You got
is.
it.
Okay,
Exactly
okay.
right.
Thank you, I was just making sure we were all on track, okay.
Okay, you ready? Okay, so this presentation is 40 slides broken down into these 5 parts. First, the purpose and the need for the Button Rock Management Plan. Where is Button Rock? Here's Boulder County, City of Longmont in purple, Town of Lyons in blue. Button Rock is up there in the foothills, west of Lyons in red. Here is Button Rock in terms of what surrounding ownership is. So lots of Forest Service around to the west. We've got some Boulder county properties, including Hall Ranch, to the right, and then, private, properties up to the central north. Button Rock Preserve is unique in our city portfolio. It's the only preserve that we have, and it houses the majority share of our municipal water supply. So through the Button Rock planning process, staff, consultants, after the data was collected, developed this text. This is the text that staff hopes that City Council will codify in the Button Rock Code. I can read it or not. You've read it. I'll read it. This is the only slide I'll read to you, okay? To protect, preserve, conserve, restore, and sustain Button Rock Preserve's municipal drinking water storage and supply, native ecosystems, wildlife habitat, and cultural resources in perpetuity. To support preserve management and enhance the ecological function of Button Rock Preserve's natural systems, as well as the greater St. Vrain Creek watershed in which it presides, and to prescribe areas suitable for passive use in addition to areas closed for resource protection, facility protection, or public safety. It's important to read it because it's kind of the theme of the rest of this, and if you can keep this in mind when we get deeper in. So,
Can I interrupt for just a second? When we took the Button Rock tour 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
yeah, it's maybe 2019, early 2019.
Yeah, I thought they told us that part of the deal with the dam designer or somebody was that recreation had to happen. Is that correct? That we can't just say no to recreation.
It's
Am I
something that the city of Longmont promised when we opened up the preserve.
as part of the bond issue or?
It's not officially in.
Okay, that's what I thought we were
Where's Ken?
told. That, oh, hi Ken, you were there.
Yeah,
I was there. Bagley was there.
I
Yeah.
even said that. Yeah, Button Rock, when Button Rock was built, we actually had to take a bond out to pay for the
Right,
construction
right.
of Button Rock. And at the time of issuing the bonds, probably one large selling point to the citizens other than water supply was that it would always be open to the citizens of Longmont for passive recreation.
Okay.
And that's why we're here today, because we have to define.
I
Okay,
wanted the
it's-
rest of the board to hear that we can't just say no more recreation, because that would be an answer, right? Would preserve the lake even better.
You know, City of Boulder, there are a lot of places that water.
Clear up there, yeah, way up on the Continental Divide, they shut it all down.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure we understood that.
Yeah, so still kind of orienting you here, this plan, worked to incorporate some specific, goals in City Council's climate emergency resolution in their work plan from 2020, as well as in Envision Longmont, which is our city's comprehensive plan from 2016. Specifically, the City Council Climate Emergency Resolution, it touches on areas of adaptation and resilience. So the areas of natural disaster resiliency, forest health, aquatic and riparian recovery health, and transportation. In the work plan, goal B2, to protect and respect our natural and public amenities. And from the comprehensive Envision plan, goal G, P5, responsible stewardship for our resources. Why now? Because we didn't do it before. Because we need this comprehensive plan and this data gathering, and to have gone through this long process to have developed that purpose that we just read, the goals we have for the preserve. We are now, they've come into clear focus throughout this process. We understand better what resources we have at Button Rock, which is something that we didn't have because this is our first comprehensive baseline data collection. Of course, there have been other efforts, various wildlife studies that were mentioned in the plan even back in the 60s. The forest stewardship plan, there was a lot of data associated with that, but this is comprehensive. We're talking vegetation, wildlife, everything. We identified where are our data gaps because this is just a baseline plan. We're getting a lot from this, but we still have work to do after this. and is helping us clarify what management and enforcement actions and recommendations we have. So now just plan development. How did we get here? We had a lot of partners. We had a lot of agency partners that sat on a technical advisory committee throughout the process, as well as consultants that worked on the plan. So Colorado Natural Heritage Program was in charge of all the botany and zoology data collection, river restoration, all the hydrology data collection, and DHM Design was did facilitation and helped us run the public meetings, did some on-the-ground data collection, and helped put together the plan. So how was the public involved throughout this process? We ran the Caring for Button Rock Preserve website page. Did any of you guys ever see that? We had several articles throughout the process in the Longmont Times Call. We conducted 4 different public surveys, and I'll give that some detail later. We had 3 public meetings. This is a picture from the Trout Unlimited meeting here. And we updated 3 different advisory boards. It will be 5 different times when this month is out. And city council 8 times when next month is out. Here's the timeline, all the things that went into the plan. Most of the heavy scientific data collection happened in 2019, but more data collection, more GIS, and other things occurred throughout these other years. And then writing the plan was in 2022 and 2023. Okay, so these are the goals that came out of this planning process, 10 goals. I'm not going to read these because they're in the plan. But the purpose informed the goals, which inform the management objectives or actions. And so it's a circular process. They all inform each other. And so in terms of baseline data, we collected botany and zoology data, or rather CNHP did, flora, rare plants, plant communities, noxious weeds, wildlife and critical wildlife habitat, river restoration, stream channel, in-stream habitat, the physical habitat of what's going on in the preserved gulches and the tributaries to the North St. Vrain, streamside corridor habitat and health. Other baseline data collection, roads and trails mapping, sign inventory was conducted, cultural resources, infrastructure, conditions, priorities. Visitor use data was collected. And so counting visitors. So this is, so now I'm, public engagement, okay. So in the past, we didn't have a automated way to count visitors. That began in 2018. So and we also began counting vehicles. So you'll see in the far right, vehicles start in 2018, and that is because that's how when we began automating it with this system. Before that, and in the early years, it was ranger estimates. Dan?
Your 2022 numbers make me suspect all the other numbers. Are you telling me that only 500 cars came in with 2 people? Because no cars came in on their own. Let's assume that's true. But there's only 500 more people than vehicles.
I checked that 3 times. Bryce, do you have any insight?
Hey, I'm Bryce Hadley.
Hi.
I'm the senior watershed ranger in charge of day-to-day operations at Button Rock. Traffic counters are kind of a regional best practice, most common infrared counter for counting public visitors to public lands. Unfortunately, they sometimes have technical issues, so over the last year, we've been working with the traffic company to resolve some irregularities in the counting. So I don't have high confidence in that vehicle's count number.
That's what I was going to
However,
ask: is the people count good or the vehicle count good, or
I'd say
which?
that both of them are. If you look at the day by day data, there are periods of time where we've had technical issues. I'd say prior to this year, it's reliable. In terms of the vehicle count number, something that you do see that's interesting is during 2020 and 2021 with resurgence of COVID, that the number was as high as it's shown. We were averaging closer to one vehicle per person.
Oh, yeah, 'cause the parking lot was full, I guess that might come up.
Well, one thing that I've noticed when I dive into the traffic's data is month to month.
Mhm.
You might see like a month is blanked out because something happened. Did that happen in 2022 that we've looked at or that we know of?
Late 2022. The traffic software
maybe I
does
should-
have an
An
algorithm that
asterisk or
Average it
something
different,
here,
do something different with that number.
Yeah.
explanatory note, something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, wow, that can't be right,
I know,
right?
it's odd, I agree, okay, thanks,
Yeah.
thanks, Dan.
And one more note on that, this is total vehicle traffic on a public roadway. So it's not, we have private land located above our gate as well as contractors, staff, etc. So it's not just showing visitor counts. So every time a resident drives in and out to get
It's showing
water
vehicles that
or
go
an
past.
engineer comes up to work on the dam, they're counted as well.
Is that a person too? Or
Well,
just
we
a
have
vehicle?
vehicle
No.
counter that's electromagnetic,
different
and then we have a
Whereas the
pedestrian
people counter.
It's
Hikers.
when people are walking on foot.
Ah, okay,
it's
wow,
right
so
back
that's
there.
tricky.
But it's a good note, and I
Oh,
will
sure.
look at that.
Thanks.
Okay, so the 4 surveys that we did. Public survey number 1 took place in 2018 between February and August. Some of the biggest findings here is that at that time, 55% of people did not bring a dog. This is also during the same time that we went to council and they put in the temporary rule that said 1 dog on a leash per person with a pickup bag. Most people come to hike, by far, and most people visit the preserve multiple times a year. 426 people took our first survey. Our second survey was that same year in the fall, so once school was back in session. And 983 people participated in that one. 67% bring 1 to 2 people in their vehicle. 60% would still visit if we charged a fee. 70% are aware that Button Rock is our drinking water source, or a large portion of our drinking water source. 82% agree that prescribed fires are an important forest health management tool. 81% prefer to encounter fewer than 25 people when they're out enjoying the preserve.
Yeah. It's Tuesday.
But 19% don't mind more than. All right, public survey number 3 was in April and May 2020, so that's right at the beginning of the pandemic. 831 people participated. Most people disagree with eliminating the fishing permit, and most people say they're in support of implementing a weekend daily vehicle pass. And most people agree with a fee during busy summer months. Also in survey number 3, in the middle there, you'll see just how the comments that we received are categorized. Lots of comments about dogs, hiking, fees, and then fewer comments on parking, trails, fishing, bikes. 131 comments total. Most people would not ride a shuttle, however, we took this at the beginning of the pandemic, so it may be, if we took this again, would they have a different response? We didn't know what was going on with the pandemic, would you wanna be in a shuttle when you don't know what's going on with the pandemic? Most people disagree with no dogs. This is a snapshot of comments, this is also in the appendices of the plan.
If you did a word cloud, I suspect dogs.
Right.
Right.
Is that what?
Nope.
Okay.
The consultants did do a word cloud for me, but it was not, and you'll see it later for survey 4, and there's different sizes for different things, and I said, is that, based on importance? No, it's not weighted. This isn't weighted.
What's the point?
I don't know.
It's supposed to be. Yeah. It's not a word cloud.
This is not a word cloud, neither is the next one I'm gonna show you. Okay, so public survey number 4 took place in early 2022, and this is, it focused on our code updates. So the things that staff wants to recommend that we update in the code, so we wanna have a standalone Button Rock Preserve code where people can go and find everything in one place and they're not going all over the place in our municipal code pages. So we asked the public about that. And we wanna include these topics. We had 215 people take this survey. And the people who took the survey agreed with 13 out of the 14 recommendations that we proposed. There were 490 written comments on this, mostly about dogs, access, water, and trails. And then with dogs, 120 people definitely disagreed with a dog moratorium, 73 people definitely agreed. There's my non-word cloud word cloud. But again, this is just comments. Scientific data results, botany and zoology. The preserve is an extremely biodiverse place. The preserve, what we found out is pretty incredible. And these are just from CNHP being out there for one short season, not 2 seasons, not 3 seasons, which would have been even better. So this is just a very brief snapshot, a very baseline, but 349 plant taxa. So that's 349 different native plants, or 349 plant species that they encountered. 85% of those were native plants. And the preserve is significant for its bat diversity. So there are 8 species of bat found in the preserve. That's 19 total for the state, so that's almost half of the biodiversity of bats for the state, just in our city preserve. 4 of those are rare bats. Our CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, in their State Wildlife Action Plan from 2015, consider 4 of the bats that are found at the preserve species of greatest conservation need. CNHP observed 65 different bird species while they were out during the summer season of 2019, but they also utilized eBird data, which is citizen science data, dating back to 1989. And CNHP's data came in 2019, and so this has been updated since by our wildlife biologist. So they had 107. It's 117 now for the preserve. 28 mammal species were observed in that short summer. 7 amphibians and reptiles, including western milk snake, which is another species of greatest conservation need per CPW. Dogs and non-native animals in the preserve and the impacts they have. They can affect the water, the wildlife. Why dogs in our preserve and not in other watersheds? What can we do to manage for present day visitor conditions? We've got to find a balance. So dogs in a protected preserve, the empirical data shows dogs have a chase instinct. They can displace native wildlife, which means that the carrying capacity of the preserve's 2,600 acres for holding native wildlife can go down, because they'll avoid areas and things. It can stress them. At important times like nesting season and things like that, and it can cause direct and indirect wildlife mortality. So this is from one specific study that was done in 2008. I pulled it out because it's from nearby, so it's a local study in the same exact foothills habitat that Button Rock occurs in, and mule deer and the small mammals that are in this study exist in Button Rock. And so this study shows that when humans hike alone, it has one impact of, out from the trail, width out from the trail. on wildlife, but when dogs are there, it increases. So it's just showing in this study how mule deer, when dogs are present, the impact on mule deer is greater, small mammals, prairie dogs.
Is that leash dogs or unleashed dogs?
This is leashed dogs, I think. I can't remember now. Let me see. Oh, it's on and off both. It's on and off both. So because, yep.
'Cause
I want this slide.
What slide?
This is not in your package.
This is not, the slideshow's not in the package, I want this.
Oh, that particular.
This would
graph.
be a great project.
Well, this is a graph from a person's study, so this person is cited.
No, it just means it's new to us. It wasn't in this big package. In the appendix, maybe? I read the whole
Well, I
thing.
mean, he's cited in the appendices, so, and
Yeah,
it's,
we can make sure that
everything is hyperlinked, so if you go to
Ah,
length, 2008, you can get to his study.
Okay.
Effects of dog waste on water. It can, so what we have at the preserve is source water, right? It's before it goes down the hill and goes through water treatment, but it's source water, and we have, aquatic and riparian habitat, we have a recreational fisheries there, and we have native fish and native macroinvertebrates and other insects occurring there. So according to the empirical data, it does have dog waste, both feces and urine has negative impacts on algae growth, biodiversity of native aquatic and riparian species, including fish, and then on our soils, it's novel inputs of nitrogen and phosphorus. So that can increase weeds and decrease native plant biodiversity, and it also adds, harmful bacteria and nutrients when those inputs occur. And then these are not from the empirical data, these are just things, during this plan, we've had staffing changes at Button Rock Preserve, and the former ranger had different practices than we do now. Other resource protection items come more to the forefront these days, and so while our former ranger did spend a good amount of time cleaning up dog waste, our current rangers don't prioritize that, and people leave dog waste unbagged, bagged, on the trail, elsewhere in the water. So that's just a change. Something to consider is ease of enforcement, and the time spent on dogs. And like we already discussed, that Dan brought up, other source watersheds and what do? Do they allow dogs and why not? And so there's just some evidence around us of other people having thought through this issue. We do city water sampling up at the preserve on our source water, but dogs and E. coli and any of that kind of stuff is not something that's sampled for. That's not a purpose of the program. And then Good Neighbor, and this was in the plan, if you remember, we're a neighbor to Boulder County and Hall Ranch, and they don't allow dogs on Hall Ranch. They went through their own process, and so they have put up signs because we have a connecting trail and we have dogs on our preserve, and they've put up signs to try and alert the public because they have had some trouble with people crossing the boundary. And here's examples of some of the dog literature that went into this empirical data. It's all in the references. And then on to our recommendations. You'll recognize these symbols here from the plan. If you read chapter 4, where we took our management actions and we prioritized them in terms of time frame and priority. So time frame, short term, which is less than 3 years, midterm, which is 5 years or less, and long term, which is 5 years or more, and then priority 1, 2, or 3. All important, but we have to prioritize things that we think we can get done first. Oh, and then ongoing. Some things will be ongoing action. So this is just a snapshot from all the categories in water resources, vegetation, forestry, wildlife. cultural, education, visitor use operations. These are a snapshot of our management action priorities. And in the background is a picture from one of our wildlife cameras.
It's alright. It's not.
Could you go back to that? Cause I can't see what that is.
That's a mama bear and a baby bear.
Okay, oh, good, okay. Just my eyes are.
Taken on July 2021. And then code updates. We talked a little bit about it when we were going through the survey information. So our recommendation would be to codify that purpose that I read out at the beginning and various regulation updates that the preserve needs to be in line with kind of what we're seeing in terms of present day visitor use. Some of those things are prohibit fires, that's not in our code, that's an important one, for safety. Prohibit smoking because that could be a fire hazard, things like that, so.
Does prohibit domestic animals mean dogs?
Yes.
Yeah. That's not what you said in your thing. Number 7B is continue to monitor dog use and compliance.
Well, this is a draft, so we have to say something in the draft, but when we get council's final say on what we're presenting, which is then things like that will have to change.
I guess I'm confused. Is that the plan or is this the plan?
That's the plan.
What on there? So why did you write it this way in this 160 page
I shouldn't have.
PDF?
I shouldn't have. I'm taking notes. The
Page
the visitor
167.
use numbers table. We need to look at that data and that item in the management actions and objectives.
Right. Yeah, I was surprised to see that because
It is, they're all over the plan, it's
well, you
something that we
stated
need to make sure that we
explicitly,
pay attention.
water and natural resources staff recommending changing section G of the code to prohibit domestic dogs.
Correct.
But then later on, you said monitor, so that
So-
confused me.
I would just imagine that even if you prohibit, you still have to monitor. People are gonna bring their dogs and you still have to monitor that. So that's gonna be ongoing whether they're prohibited or
Well-
not. You're gonna have to monitor whether there's fires because there's
You're
people
right.
like me.
You're both right, actually, because I would update that language no matter what. And it was similar to when city council put in the temporary dog rule in 2019, where we had a period where it was an educational time, where we weren't doing any sort of actual enforcement other than education, no ticketing, things like that. There was a period of time where we did that, so it was kind of phased and staged. So you're both right, if that makes sense.
I think you're gonna get a lot of flack, but it looks like you're slipping it in better than this did. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but
It's not meant to be slipped in, it's meant to be clear, and I agree with you that that piece of the table could be updated to be more clear.
because earlier you said 55% of the people don't want dogs, but the other 45%, which is a lot of people, do want. Right, the other,
So, and it was
45% brought dogs.
And I think it was like 70%
Right.
were really angry
Right.
about the thought of not being able to bring their dog, but whatever. It's water.
Okay, so we're almost done, this is my very last slide. And that is that we are recommending, management zones for the preserve. So you saw that in the document. This goes along with present day management conditions, and this is based on the data that was collected and, publicly available state data that comes from CPW that helped us develop and draw these management zones that we recommend.
I couldn't tell, is this new or is this a change? The zone, I think the zone idea is great.
This is a brand new.
Okay, it wasn't obvious, so there's another note for you. That wasn't obvious. I couldn't tell, is this a change from before or,
Okay.
but the fact that it's new, that's good, you should say that.
Yeah,
Would be my
so
thought.
in there, I do say things that we recommend and that things that data was collected during the plan but are not being recommended as updates. Like, for instance, we talked about, the shuttle and the survey that happened
Right.
1-2 months into the beginning of the COVID outbreak. That's not a current recommendation. That's something that we gathered data on, and there is language in there about how these are,
No, I'm,
data points,
right.
but not making it into the recommendations.
no, I just meant the zone in particular. I thought there must already be zones, and this was an update to them. That's what I was confused
Nope,
about.
this
So
is-
you
this
should
is-
just say that, as part of this management. That would be my thought, sorry.
Okay, no,
Just
thank you.
remember, Dan, that there has been no Button Rock management plan previously. This is our initial, so there is no zones, there is no nothing. Danielle's
Well, but
created
there's
all of
something, because right now, one dog on a leash.
Well, it's
and-
ordinances.
Right,
Not a whole overall plan.
okay, well, maybe that's the way to say it then.
There are ordinances, but the ordinances need updating. And so, and in those, one of the ordinances deals with closures, which would, be certain areas that are closed
Right.
per these management zones, which are adaptable because they are based on the data that we currently have, the best available scientific data that we have today. But we wanna keep collecting data, and visitor use may continue to evolve, so we wanna present this now, but let you know that they're adaptable.
Great, thank you. I know this is gonna, I think you were starting this right when I first got on the board, or maybe you had just barely starting, so it's great to see it.
This is like a
Coming to
thesis, this is
fruition.
amazing. I mean, it's
It
just
is,
an
it
incredible
really
amount of
is.
info
So
there.
thank you for all your work, and
Yeah.
I know lots of people were involved, but really appreciate it.
Just on that, I will give a little piece here. You saw all the agencies involved, you saw the consultants involved. They all threw in really great pieces of work. Danielle really did a lot to make this one comprehensive document. I think sometimes you think
Right.
it all comes together. Danielle has spent an immense amount of time making sure all that information came together in one.
It's amazing. I mean, it's a lot of stuff.
And you're the first readers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Question over there from the public? From the public?
Can you go back to slide 27? I think it's 27.
Don't watch, so you don't get dizzy. That,
No, keep going.
we're in the public surveys.
Right.
What do you want? What are you looking for? And I can maybe know which way to
You're
go.
the very bottom one. You make it that the public wanted organized sports at Button Rock?
What? No, there's no code language dealing with organized sports, or the language needed to be updated to be clear for specifically the preserve, because remember, we're trying to ask for a standalone Button Rock code section, 1320-060. So you can go here and you can read everything you need to know. Can you do organized sports at Button Rock? If it's somewhere else in the code and it's not clear what happens at the preserve, then there's language specific to the preserve in this section.
And that I understand. The way slide presents, it makes it sound as though to be included
I
in
thought
Button
the
Rock
same
is
thing.
you want
Right.
I was like,
a
wait,
code
soccer
statement
tournaments?
that allows organized sports.
Oh, okay.
We want to
So the
address
slide is
organized.
addressed.
Yeah,
it's
right,
just the
right.
slide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well then,
Organized sports prohibited, or.
Well, or
you
just
should be
Or-
taking
For
notes,
the
but I
sake-
guess I can
right.
watch it. Rules.
sections,
Okay.
sections that address, bing, 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 what,
Yeah,
right? Leave it open, what's decided, but
Okay, I hear that.
Yeah.
So,
No,
I mean, that's,
explaining it makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
no, I wondered
Yeah.
the same thing.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so
The
my
other-
head didn't translate
Yeah, you
to
saw all
the
that.
big screen.
Right.
Are there any other questions from the board members?
Oh, I knew, there was one more there.
Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Okay,
Unless
perfect.
it's the same, is it the same?
It's different.
Okay, let's just check in with the board members and then. Anyone?
Comprehensive.
Well, I do have questions. What's the probability of expanding the reservoir in the future?
Possibility of what over it?
Of expanding the reservoir in the future?
Very likely, but not for a very long time, so Ken Houston, Water Resources Manager. It is one of our future water supply projects, if needed in the future. Actually, our current project that we're doing right now is Chimney Hollow Reservoir, which is Windy Gap Firming Project. Based on current comprehensive planning, that should take us to build out of the community, actually called Planning Horizon. We have other projects in the works too, Union enlargement, Union pumpback pipeline. Button Rock, the enlargement of Ralph Price Reservoir is kind of the third tier of all those projects, also because of its cost. Compared to enlarging Union or pumpback pipeline, it's the most expensive of any of those projects. But we maintain diligence on it, and you can't predict the future. There's lots of things that could occur in the water arena. So we may need to, but we're certainly.
You said the other one was pump back pipeline?
It's called Union Reservoir Pumpback Pipeline. That's installing the pump at Union Reservoir and then pumping the water back to the west. Reuse scheme.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah?
The couple of questions I have is really from a public perspective is I was not able to, as a general member of the public, see this document and the draft document. Is that, I looked all over the city's website today for a link, to look at the plan. I couldn't find one anywhere. Is that available for the public to review the plan and to provide comment?
It's not. It can be. It's still being formatted. So what the board read is a double-spaced, single-page, but no, it's not currently on the website with a link.
And or an opportunity for the public to make comment. And then my other question is obviously you're getting comments from the Parks Board today. Will the Sustainability Board, or what's the process by which the Sustainability Board and the Water Board sees the Parks Board's comments as they're reviewing the plan?
So I appear in front of the Sustainability Board on Wednesday, and I will answer their questions, but I will have a couple of minutes to talk about this item, but I can mention it then. With Water Board, I can add it to this possibly, because there will have been two boards before that time, and there's a little bit more time, so it could be included in the slideshow so that it's in a written format and it's documented.
Just remember that the comments that come from Parks Board come through a vote of the members of the Parks Board. And so I think those can be communicated, whatever those comments may be, to other boards and or council. But the public process is going to these 3 public meetings and going to city council. That is the public process for this. After all of the other public processes you've engaged on. So I think it's there. The public opportunity for comment is definitely there.
So, yeah, Scott?
So the part that gets me, of course, is the dog restriction, the domestic animal restriction portion of it, is that at no point in the presentation was there an acute problem presented, right? It was data in general about domestic animals in general. The data was on other studies. The water data doesn't even collect, domestic animal fecal E. coli problems. It can't possibly be an issue because, of course, there's a lot of other mammals that contribute to fecal chloroforms. So I don't understand what the specific problem, because it wasn't really presented, is that mitigates, other than it will then create now a problem, because all of your data so far and all the surveys are contradictory to what the public wants in that. So you never created like a natural use problem.
So to address that, and to kind of go back to what Paige was saying, everybody here has been here for a different amount of time. We started this process back in 2019 and came to city council at various interim points. And when we first presented this plan and this need and can we, to enter into an IGA, to have a Colorado Natural Heritage Program, collect the botany and zoology, we did present an acute problem that we wanted to learn more about. And that is why city council enacted a temporary dog rule that is pending the final results of this plan. And they wanted at the time staff to make more clear recommendations, to just make a recommendation for them and then they could just vote on that. But we said at the time we weren't comfortable doing that. We really wanted to collect the data and see and have this whole process occur before making a recommendation. And so now that the process has occurred, we are recommending prohibiting dogs because of the increase in visitor use, the increase in dogs, the fact that it's a protected preserve, the known data effects on wildlife, water, soil, plant biodiversity. I don't know if that got at your question, but I mean, when you said that, what I think is, oh yes, I was part of something that you didn't maybe see because it occurred back in 2019.
Right, but you still also don't have a time phase like study, right? You don't have when it was unlimited dogs or whatever it was, the rule was before, to when it is one dog, what the impact difference is. You're also just presenting data that's a mix of both worlds. And so that's also doesn't show, well, maybe it dropped off. 90% of the problem may have dropped off. And that's not in your data.
That wasn't part of the scope of this plan.
But if it's
what comes to the forefront in the emotional forefront is dogs. People want to know what's going on with dogs, but it's one data point of all the data points. And so the reason I presented all the data points is because it's not something that I necessarily meant to highlight in the data. And as you say, in this baseline data collection study, we did not do any specific study on dogs per se. There was a little ranger data collection via cameras to look at compliance, and that was in there. But the reason we didn't highlight dogs is because it's one of many things that we're recommending.
Right, and I think, speaking for myself, I do think this is an incredibly unique place. The fact that we have this kind of a nature preserve in Longmont, and that it is a place where wildlife can be and where we can have our, natural water quality protected. I totally hear that dogs is something that, people value, people want places to take them, but I feel like this is a really unique location, and the reasons that it was established were for biodiversity and water protection.
And
recreation. And recreation, but passive recreation.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those things have been honored in this. I feel like they've done a good job of understanding what the incredibly rich biodiversity is in this place. And the impacts of dogs in watersheds are, there's lots and lots of studies about that. So I personally am very supportive of these recommendations, and I would love for us to be able to express that support.
And,
but I don't.
Well, I'm not going to interrupt you guys.
Yes, did someone else have a question? Or?
I was queuing up the next question, but I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I just wanted to say that, maybe having given this presentation, I didn't highlight, all throughout it, I put this visual here of we want to protect the watershed, we want to protect the preserve, and then a tertiary goal is to allow for passive recreation. So yes, we're never, it's not part of this plan. It's not in any results anywhere. Let's close the preserve to the public. That's not it. But if this piece, if the recreation piece, if what we're finding is visitor use is going way up and the preserve is being affected or could be affected as a result with all of these things that we know now about the biodiversity, then that's the triangle that we were focusing on with recommendations and code updates.
So Danielle, I think it's what, sorry, you had one.
No,
You were, I was just gonna kind of, again, I kind of worked with the group watching how we put this together. I really do think is that upside down triangle is really how do we take that lowest level piece, that recreation piece, and I think Danielle has some good graphics that we can protect the watershed and protect the preserve. And I don't think we were trying to address an acute issue there. It's just as we know that we see increased use along the Front Range from all use groups, that in an overall comprehensive plan, that dog use was a piece of it. It wasn't really trying to address an acute piece, but really to make sure we're hitting those top pieces. How do we then insert that recreational piece that we, throughout this process, is one of the big pieces. We want to make sure that we have that included in a way that we think going forward we can preserve all those higher tier uses. So you're right. I don't think it was addressed, and I mentioned that. It was not addressed as an acute issue, but it's one of the pieces that we wanted to weigh into how we manage a preserve.
Is the board interested in expressing support for this to city council? If so, oh, did you have a question?
I had a comment and a question. I wanted to make 2 points. My comment is, first off, as a responsible, so-called responsible dog owner, certainly very disappointing to hear about this. But I also, going to Button Rock and seeing other dog owners that are not responsible, really frustrating. And what are they doing? And that's just the hard truth of what it is. And so, with the interim change in the ordinance that brought it down to 1 dog, I have 2 dogs. I had to just adapt to that new change. And I'm still going on. I'm still recreating. I'm still finding. It's not like it wasn't the end of the world for me. And I think it is acceptable. And acknowledging how important this preserve is for our city, you have to really sit back and how agreeing that recreation has to is important, but priorities, right? So that's my comment. My question is on the plan. I'm reading one on the enforcement considerations, and I want to tease this out a little bit. So it says a prohibition on dogs is simpler to enforce than a mixed approach, such as not allowing dogs in certain areas, trails, but allowing them in others. It provides one clear, easy to follow policy that does not require future educational campaigns or map changes. So I think that's very intuitive. It makes total sense. My question is that based off of advice or recommendations from a consultant, or is that just based off our own intuition? Is there science to kind of support that?
Do you want me to take that, or do you want?
Sure, I can speak to that. I guess kind of both. If you look at human dimensions and natural resources research, there is a body of research that speaks to kind of the limits of visitors' ability to digest only a certain amount of information. When you look at trailhead signage and how it's designed, how many visual messages can you digest and remember as a visitor, and does that fade over time? So there is a certain amount of research done on it. Human dimensions and natural resources is an emerging field, so it's not as deep of a research field as like biology, botany, whatever. From a ranger perspective, and 10 years of being a ranger, and thinking about Button Rock specifically, and thinking about kind of our values when it comes to taking an inclusive approach to public visitation to Button Rock, and thinking about when we're communicating in universal symbols, bilingual signage, all of that. We have all of these things that we're trying to balance when we're communicating with the public, and helping them to make the right decision. So it's not just me going out there with a blunt instrument and writing a ticket. The simpler that message is, the more straightforward it is, the easier it is to follow. That's kind of what that's speaking to. Especially, and again, that ties back for me at least into the inclusivity piece of wanting to make sure that it's the easiest message for people to understand when they come to Button Rock, that they have a positive experience, that they're not walking away with a couple $100 fine, that they're finding it to be an easy message to digest, as opposed to having a nuanced regulation with multiple zones throughout the preserve where you can have dogs, or cannot have dogs. If you look at human dimensions and natural resource research that has been done locally, City of Boulder Open Space and Mountain Parks being one example, compliance with dog regulations goes down when there's temporal regulations. So what I mean by that is certain days of the week, or
Right.
certain times of the year, when you can have dogs, or you can have them off leash under voice and sight control, or you have to have them on leash, and if that varies through time, people's compliance goes down, and that's shown in research. So again, it's kind of both anecdotal and research based.
It's helpful. That was it. Thanks.
Dan?
Well, as a Parks and Recreation Board member, I feel obligated to represent recreation people, the 45% who brought dogs in particular. And so I haven't been in a year. My dog got old, can't do that hike anymore.
Yeah, your dog.
Pardon?
So you were-
But
Salty.
all the folks I talk to, when I bring this up, they are all, you gotta get them to show you the data. I mean, I get an earful just like you are tonight. And so it's not personal, I don't mean to be that way, but I'm really worried that you're gonna have quite the uproar. And to Dan's point, I don't know how much advertising will be out before city council talks to this, but it'll be one of those issues that they're gonna get an earful, when they decide to pass ordinances if there's a no dog one. So I'm not sure how best, to your point, Bryce, it's easier, but as a recreation, forestry, for the city kind of thing, copping out with, because it's easier, is not gonna win you friends either. I mean,
But that's not what I hear them saying. I mean, what I hear them saying is that there are two overarching priorities for and maybe it's a communication.
Well, I understand it from the water board, that would make perfect sense,
but
but
the
from the
preserve is
recreation
biodiversity.
board,
But we're Parks and Recreation Board, we're not
Which includes
recreation.
open space.
Yeah, so we
Okay.
are Parks and Recreation, and it actually, Parks comes first before Recreation.
is this a park or a preserve?
Yeah, I don't know, it is a preserve, and that's under that, I don't know, I feel like it's just, I hear what you're saying, that I do believe that in the public facing, when this comes out for vote, that there should be some maybe stronger presentation, this is excellent presentation, stronger definitive presentation that's anti-dog. And I am voting wholeheartedly, I will be, for adopting this plan. I think it's fabulous, and I think we need to protect this area. But that's what it is. I want to bring the llama, but I can't. I don't know. Got some different views, I think, than other people, but I think that maybe he's right, that we need to have it be stronger. But I'm willing for people to complain at me about their dog not being able to be at one area.
I think this takes a unique place and makes it like every other Heil Ranch or Hall Ranch if you get rid of dogs. It's no longer unique. This is one of the few places where you can go hike in the mountains with your dog.
The only one that I really know of, actually.
Right. That's part of why we get so many.
Yeah.
So it'll become Hall Ranch. And in fact, it's kind of backwards because Hall Ranch and Heil should allow dogs. We have a lake. They don't. This is stupid. Boulder did it first is why we're stuck in this position. I mean, it allows dogs and people are used to that and like it.
Sure.
But we have a lake to protect. We have a better case for prohibiting dogs than Boulder County did, if you look at it right? If you could hike at Hall Ranch with dogs, then you'd have a place and we could prohibit them here.
But there are lots of places to hike with your dogs.
Not in the city of Longmont.
Not that many.
This is one.
Not within the.
All right,
Yeah.
I don't want to, we're not here necessarily to debate this issue. I feel like if we cannot, as Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, support this plan, I'm gonna be super disappointed, but if that's where we are, then I don't know that there's much value in us continuing to just kind of go round and around.
Well, I'll just vote no, but that doesn't mean the board won't vote yes. It's up to you guys. If you want it unanimous, then we're a hung jury.
Right.
What's the policy on that? We can, is is the board,
It doesn't have to be unanimous.
No, we just always have been forever.
It's important too.
So Paige, I'd like to make a motion that, the board supports the plan with the exception of the domestic animal part of the plan, which I believe, we can talk about it, but I don't believe it meets evidence, specific and direct evidence. Photo of an unleashed dog is not a good way of presenting, the case. And so, if the Parks and Rec Board supports the plan, we can do so 90% of the way and just be quiet on the domestic animal side.
Makes sense.
and we're not supporting them.
No, that's specifically why I support the plan, is because of the new dogs ordinance. There are other parts of the plan that I'm a little more iffy on. The fact that you can only passively recreate within like 20 feet of the trail, and you can't go study your own orchid lady slipper. I'd rather have that, right? Like, because that's my kind of recreation. But such a unique ecosystem, it's a place that needs to be protected, and dogs are a big part of it. In my footprints, going to the orchid slipper lady butterfly plant, I will forego along with the dogs to protect this area.
So, did you want to make that as a formal motion? And if you do, then we need a second. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to make that as a formal motion.
So do you want to restate it? So
Yeah.
we can get it?
The Longmont Parks and Recreation Board supports the Button Rock Preserve management plan with the exception of the domestic animal policy.
Need a second? All those in favor? All those opposed?
There you go.
I mean, we could do the opposite motion, but I don't see the point. So, I think maybe we'll just need to express our own feelings to city council. And,
Could you, sorry, just for staff, could you, as Scott alluded to before, agree on 90% of the plans and support that portion, but we are not able to reach agreement on the domestic animal?
That's what I thought we were doing.
That was the vote that he
Wasn't
said.
that what-
Right.
Yeah.
You're not
Not
comfortable
the
with that
way
page?
it's
That was
stated.
his.
Okay.
So that's a decent suggestion.
But that's what.
That's what-
Yeah, we're not necessarily saying that you
We're
can't.
not,
We're not like, yeah, right.
I mean,
It's inconclusive, not.
Inconclusive.
Yeah, it's not.
that would be a different motion to say that we are in support of the plan, we are not in agreement around the domestic animal.
Can you make that motion, Paige, that you just said, because I'll mess it up.
Well, I don't, does that feel meaningful to you?
As opposed to what you just did?
To have the expression of the support without, and just sharing that we are divided.
Sure, yes, I mean, I don't think dogs are 10% of the plan.
Okay. Then I would like to make a motion that we express support from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for the Button Rock Preserve, but recognize that we are split on the question of whether or not to allow for domestic animals. And we communicate that to City Council.
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
So that we can vote on. I'm pretty sure. It's every day.
Any opposed? So motion carries with a majority. Thank you.
Thanks. Like I said, impressive. Really is a lot of work. Nice.
I just real, I do think one thing is with taking this to these boards, it is a reflection of the community at large, and it helps us, I think, as we get prepared to take this forward, to really have some of that information and one of the things I think is, Dan, you talked about having a link to this document. I think Danielle has the ability to, still in that draft form, refine this, there's pieces we're gonna take into. I think staff recommendation is still staff recommendation, but there are places I think we heard some stuff tonight that is definitely beneficial to how we carry that message forward. So I wanna thank the board for your input on this.
I agree, thank you, I think your insight.
This is as
really-
much homework
really
as we've ever
valuable.
had to do. It was kind of fun. I was glad I was retired.
It was very interesting, and thank you for the document, it was fun to read.
Okay, next item on old business, future recreation facility and the library recreation.
So I have, David and I have two updates. In a separate email, you were sent the proposed timeline for the cultural fund tax. And with the first part of what will be happening is a scientific survey will be conducted yet this month. It will be sent out and conducted by a group that will have valid survey, so we as a group won't be able to just put in our feedback, but we'll give good information to city council on what the community is feeling as it relates to the multiple things that are included in the proposal right now. So it's our hope, ours being staff in this room, that by your next meeting, we will have results of that survey that we'll be able to present to you all.
Has it already started?
No, council, it's, with council now, they're finalizing, their feedback, and then we have the company, we've gotten feedback from the company that will be conducting the survey, and it's ready to go once council gives their approval.
And do we know what's on the poll? Like what is the range of things that will be asked?
It will ask whether you've used some of these facilities over the last period of time, what is your support of building a new rec center, a new library as an example, and also what is your feeling on whether you're willing to pay additional taxes for it. And each one will be, people will have the opportunity to vote on, I want this, but not that kind of thing, or my preference.
Do you know, so we all talked about, things that we would like to have sort of explored as this was being shaped, in December meeting about it. Do you know if those will all be considered in some way?
They've been
Or a
shared, but
range of them?
No is probably the best answer.
I would like to see the survey include some open-ended, we're only.
But I'm not here to ask your approval for the survey.
Oh, okay.
I don't mean to be rude, but you all are not being asked for your feedback.
Okay.
The council and the leadership of the city are making those decisions, which is usually not how we do business, but because time is of the essence, there really wasn't a way that we could take feedback from all of the boards and be able to get it turned around in a timely manner.
Do you think we'll have the results by March 13th when we next meet?
That is my hope, but it just depends on how long it takes council to do their final approval. Sorry, Aaron, I didn't.
It's refreshing to be told that you didn't actually want my opinion, because sometimes I think that our board is here to say yes, and so.
But
that's
none of the
actually
boards
good.
are being asked.
Okay, then that's fine, I just, yeah.
So additional council direction is after the poll results,
Yes.
and we're not gonna put in we agree, or, there's nothing to agree or disagree, but you're just, if we get lucky, we'll get the results, but we're not gonna give you any further recommendations or.
Well, my hope would be that we'd be able to do that after.
So that's our
But
chance.
I can't make any commitment because David and I and Ben are not in the driver's seat.
Okay. I got that right, March 13th, February
Yeah.
28th.
Yeah.
So we just have talked in the past on this board about some of the challenges during the last ballot initiative and kind of lack of pre-work and really reliable polling, and so this, I'll just say, worries me a little bit. Because I feel like maybe this isn't gonna be the best, like the kind of robust foundation we were hoping for, and I know you don't have anything to do with that, but it's a worrisome start.
Well phrased.
And that's why I was saying that I'd like to see open-ended questions, because people want to support something that they have input on, but they don't want to support something that is being presented that they didn't have their input in. So I think that it will have less of a chance of passing without that kind of background, but that's okay. That's how that's how it's going. It's gonna go, and it'll pass or it won't.
I will get you the questions as soon as they're made public.
Well,
Oh,
I'm
as an
assuming
email
we'll
or
have to
something.
be in
Yeah,
the
I'll
survey, we'll have
absolutely.
to do the survey before.
Yeah, we don't have to do this, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you won't be able to. It's a scientific, it will be sent directly to households, kind of like the customer satisfaction survey. It's gotta be random, so like I said, us as a group, we can't all say, yeah, we want this and that, because then it slants the results.
The random is actually.
It's not gonna be the
Larger
Longmont, it's not gonna be the Longmont leader poll. In other words, it's not- yeah.
Do you know what the additional community involvement would look like?
Well, Ben, during items from staff, will be giving an update on where we're at with the master plan and the
Great.
feasibility study. And it will be very limited because why don't you give that right now?
Since we're talking about that, yeah, we're in the midst of review at this point for the RFP, for the feasibility study for the facility and recreation program master plan. So we can't actually talk any more about it than that, but we are in that right now. Hope to complete that process quickly, and then we'll start. And this is about the feasibility study for rec center, not all of the other things within this. And you guys are familiar with that process, and it will look somewhat similar to the things we think about. And so that part of the process is my hope that we will be very public, very robust with the public, and that will be our requirements with our consultants to do that.
So you're, just to clarify, so you're reviewing, the RFP went out and
And
you're reviewing proposals?
yeah, the deadline is passed and we're reviewing proposals.
And what are they since we had asked to see the RFP, but we did never get to see it, so can you tell us what was in it? What are you asking consultants to help you with?
To design
Yeah.
a rec center and also to evaluate, and I think we have talked about this a little bit.
We talked about the master plan RFP, but not specifically what would be in.
Right. And we'll send that to you. We'll send that out tomorrow, so that you have the specifics about that. But in the proposal, we will need to be done by end of June, so that any information can be presented back to you all and to city council.
And we asked for a number of public input meetings, at least this many, a number of scientific studies, scientific surveys, so random like this one. And then, well, it's all, we can get that to you guys. That's a public document, so.
Other questions? Okay.
I have one actually. So we talked about like the transition of once this gets into, once we closer to the election, like city staff can't really, has to take a more objective viewpoint. What part of the timeline does that like transition happen?
August.
August.
Once city council has placed items on the ballot, then we can only give the facts.
The facts. Okay, thank you.
But we, as a board, we get to still do that, and we
Yeah.
did a bad job last time. Would be, right? I mean, we didn't help enough, and it was a different thing, but that would be my thought was, we all could step up, should we?
I think that's kind of what I was asking, like when is it our turn to step
Right.
up? August.
Well, I think depending though, we could also, on this, you know, like April, May, the community, it depends on what form that takes.
Yeah.
Okay. Bicentennial Park.
Do you wanna leave that? Okay.
Kick that one off a little bit. So, as we've been looking for ways to kind of increase the amount of pickleball used within the community, one of the things we've been talking about with the pickleball leadership in the community was, you know, the conversion of some of the space over at Clark Centennial to convert the existing Wheels Park to a space that would allow for permanent nets and then permanent painting of lines on that space. And then in the roller hockey space, have a shared space because that's still used for roller hockey and some of the winter soccer use over there, and to put permanent lines on that. And then convert the existing tennis courts to pickleball courts. And had a community meeting. I think we had 3 individuals from the neighborhood show up and 3 individuals from the pickleball community show up. And I think it was a good conversation. I think that the neighbors up there had some good questions about things from noise, the type of use, actually the ability to be able to use those courts as they were switched over if the clubs were using them all the time. I think those questions were answered fairly well in the way that Jeff has managed Quail tennis courts when we have tournaments, that we try to keep those open for the public as well. I think everyone in that meeting left feeling like that sort of a change was something that they could support. Again, it's a pretty small group, but I think one of the things we also have learned doing this for a long time, when something really is a big issue for the community, people have a tendency to show up if it's going to be something that really impacts them. We did receive some letters though. We want to make sure that we got to the board members, and I think everybody's had a chance to see those. So that's where we're at right now. And Jeff, are we looking really for this board to give?
I think we at least want your feedback of what your thoughts are on making that conversion.
Do you have any community feedback from the Hover Park area? Neighbors in particular, since those courts are converted.
We really don't hear anything from the neighbors.
That's just another data
I would say
point.
the piece that, I know it's just a small anecdotal, we have got information back from the community that informed, I think one was a written letter or one was from staff that heard it too. Some of the activities are taking place over in the parking lots as far as things that were not activities we would like to really see over there. Those have been displaced by the increased use in the pickleball community. So if it's vandalism or some of the drug use that people are seeing over there, that seems to have at least a few neighbors.
My experience is that those courts are full all the time.
So,
I mean,
and that's exactly what's then displaced some of the bad behavior.
Yeah, but
So that's what
no
we're
neighbor noise complaining?
I've never
Okay.
gotten the one at the recreation center, so. that's
Okay.
what they call. So, which is interesting.
So if I wanted to go and play tennis and it's marked for pickleball, can I just go ahead and play tennis?
It's a different size court, so you can't really play the official.
The net height is different.
Yeah, and
Net
it's-
height is
It's the
different.
stupidest thing of all time. But just dumb. Why-
yeah.
Why design too dumb?
Well, you could certainly hit the ball around, but you couldn't play a true game.
And then the closest tennis courts, if you wanted to, because that coming from you would come from, you'd have other options before you got over there from where you're at.
Oh,
And then
no,
as far as if you're in
I have
then
no
if you're in the
desire to
neighborhood-
play either tennis or pickleball.
Okay.
I am just
Right.
saying like, yeah, there's
For neighbors.
plenty of tennis around me right now and plenty of pickleball going in around me. I just wanna know, like, I'm just trying to, like, I just don't get why we can't play both sports on both things. Do we have that many tournaments coming in? And if we do, what kind of money are they paying for it? Pay it for it?
Well, it isn't necessary, it's about day-to-day play right now.
But day-to-day play, you can play on anything, like, you expect, you know, like,
But
so
you
many.
can't, because it's not marked for that. Right now, Hover's the only designated complex, it's got
What's that?
six courts.
Courts, right? Six.
Yes. The Pickleball Association, Gene, by the way, behind you is with Pickleball Association. But they've gone in and done some temporary things at all of the inline courts at Left Hand Willow and at Clark.
Skate park, inline skating,
Right. Yeah.
it was a fad
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Come back.
Is it?
Skating's back big, yeah.
Oh boy, prepare for another fight, huh?
Yep.
So the
Yeah.
inline, they understand that it's a first come, first served.
Shared use.
Yeah. So, but on what was the wheels court, and then we're proposing taking the 2 tennis courts out and putting 6 courts back in there. The association's presenting that, not staff, we're responding to that.
And I think one thing as far as tournaments, right now, tennis does have quail and a few of the ways that they manage that. Right now, the pickleball community, to answer your question, we can't answer that because we have not had the ability to allow them to have tournaments because we don't have enough facilities within our piece. So this would give them the ability to at least start seeing how, running tournaments potentially could benefit our.
But really, we're looking for day-to-day increase.
Yeah,
from permanent parts.
tournaments have not been the driver.
Right, it's not the driver.
And
And
for
I thought
tennis,
that they
tournament,
I thought they
Okay,
were
let's have one.
all marked. Like, I thought they had both markings on there, cause that's when I was
Yeah.
reading this, it has
On
both
Clark.
markings.
They have, at Clark, they have 2 tennis and 2 pickleball. We're proposing that it becomes 6 pickleball. Because of the demand that we're seeing within.
So, is there, does the tennis community have any concern about this? Does the neighborhood want to have tennis and pickleball?
Well, that was the public meeting we held, and we sent out, I included the map, but that area, we had 3 neighbors, none of them tennis or pickleball players. We had the 2 emails that spoke against it. So
The tennis community, though, we met with
Yeah,
them actually, and they actually were supportive of us making the change here so that it did not impact other areas.
well, to be fair, that's the Longmont Tennis Association,
Right.
not neighbors who might go play tennis,
Right.
random
Which was
15-year-old
traffic,
kids.
Which was the mailing.
Right, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was.
Can I just ask, so we're kind of talking about like an all or nothing kind of deal, why not just cannibalize one of the tennis courts instead of both of them? You get 2 more pickleball, and you still have at least 1 tennis.
because the uses conflict. If you have somebody playing tennis on one court and multiple people playing on the crossway of the other court, they're gonna be interfering with each other all the time. There are, how many tennis courts in town? 10 at Quail, and then they're at Willow, they're at Carr, or not Willow, I meant,
Carr, Pratt, Affolter.
in Dawson. So it's,
So
so 20
the LTA is in particular, it's not the tournaments at all, it's the weekly leagues that go on all summer, and they do pay for those. I mean, the tennis players all have to put in money, and we buy time on, on the thing. And I would hope, I suspect, pickleball will come to that same place.
Yep.
So we'll get more people out there playing, and that's why the LTA says, fine, we're not using these courts, go ahead. But again, they're not representing neighborhood kids who want to I'm just reminding everybody that use changes. So, we have to decide, or we get to decide, whatever.
But again, usually when people have an opinion, they show up at meetings or they email. And again, I'm not trying to downplay the 2 emails or the number of people that showed up at the meeting, but it came across to staff as it doesn't seem like there's a push for it or against it. And we asked pickleball not to show up in droves at the meeting because we knew their.
Well, my impression, I got recently stuck onto the LTA board, probably because I'm also on this board. And my impression is that they are happy for pickleball to have these courts, to be done with a problem and to divvy it up, and to keep what LTA has, which is courts which are playable for league play. And it's enough courts. It's not gonna be enough courts in the future because Boulder is about to lose our MTC. The Rocky Mountain Tennis Center has been bought, behind the.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's gonna disappear, and there's gonna be a huge influx of folks playing on LTA leagues. So we're not done with this problem, but I think the LTA's thought is, we're never gonna play leagues on these courts, so pickleball should, I think it's, and your impression is it's friendly, right, between the two boards?
Yes, we also met with the tennis.
Yeah, right, Scott in
association.
particular.
So, yeah.
And Aaron, I think this kind of goes back to one of your questions, is you can't have sanctioned matches either in tennis or pickleball if they have multiple lines on it. So we're trying to stay away from the tennis courts that we know that LTA, the Tennis Association, uses, and the compromise they made was they would be okay not using Clark if we stayed away from the other courts.
Right.
And I think that's what, Jeff and I came up with the same thing, can't we just share and do this low hanging fruit, let's just share. But between the two clubs, the best way to share was to have separate spaces, so you're sharing physical space that way.
So, I don't have a strong opinion about this, but I just would remind that there are multiple uses. I mean, the inline skating rinks, for example, I know lots of kids that like to use them for hockey and skating. And so, just in terms of balancing, and I'm guessing that, pickleball is gonna continue to grow and probably want other facilities, I don't imagine. I think we're considering a new one, right, in one of the parks?
It's already.
Nino Gallo.
Nino Gallo will have 4 courts, yes.
Right, so.
This is already an improvement
You
over
know,
the original design, right?
Back to the, I don't know, like whenever there's a look again at, the recreation piece of the master plan, I think thinking again about how we balance these uses and ensure that, particularly the people in the neighborhoods who don't have an organized organization, they don't have a tennis association or a pickleball association, they're just people using their recreational facilities, we need to make sure that they don't get pushed out of those opportunities.
I agree. I think that maybe the where we're talking about, that it's more likely to be used just for people goofing around to play pickleball than it would be used for people goofing around to play tennis, looking at that neighborhood, so.
Yeah.
And our proposal doesn't change anything with the inline skate rinks.
Also, it's like a removable net or something, or there's no.
What all we've done is tape lines there, and it's portable nets, so. And we've had skaters show up when we're playing, and usually it's only like a dad and some kids or whatever. Anyway, they just use one half and we're down and it's shared and never a problem.
That's nice. Thanks for being nice.
So do you need a recommendation from us? Is that?
It would be good
I think
if
so.
we could do that, yeah.
I don't really feel strongly about. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd like to move to recommend that we do carry on with removing these two tennis courts, replacing them as it seems to be in agreement with multiple boards with pickleball courts.
a second?
Go ahead.
I wonder who that was.
Scott was first.
All those in favor? I'm just gonna abstain. Alright.
Thank you.
Was is there any thought to the one downtown, Collier Park yet?
We are going to resurface that with as is with pickleball and tennis, based on
And that was a
feedback
good
we
from
did
neighbors.
receive from the neighbors.
Okay, thanks, I remember that letter
Sure.
from Sharon a couple months ago, yeah.
Great, okay, let's move on to new business. We have consider board retreat in the agenda calendar. Dave, where do you wanna?
Do you wanna talk about the board retreat?
I'm not really prepared to talk about that tonight, so maybe we
So
can
let's
just put that
table
calendar.
it and.
Yeah.
I'm getting my van training on Friday, so I can ride.
Oh, sweet.
That, no, we're not talking field trip.
We can talk about the field trip though. Let's not forget, we wanna talk about our road trip, our float.
Oh, yeah, we do. Actually, let's float through it wouldn't be much of a float. Let's float through Button Rock. That would be
Float on button.
So do you wanna talk through the calendar?
Yeah.
I think if everyone has.
Yeah,
it,
so-
just prep it.
Based on the feedback you all gave us at the January meeting, we've updated the agenda calendar and just wanted any more feedback, or if you could approve that, and this is what we would move forward with.
Paige, you're involved with this planning also, right? Or is this just,
Well, this is similar to what we did last year,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of updated based on feedback, so it's kind of a similar cadence. The one thing, I mean, I see field trip discussion and planning in April, and I thought you said if we did wanna consider doing something on the river, we needed to do that plan, Steve, what kind of trying to get you.
Runoff, mid-May to late June.
Okay, so talking about it in April would be okay.
so, yeah, we do it on a second Monday of a month, that sounds like the second Monday in June.
I can go floating any day.
Okay, I mean, in the past, we've done field trips during,
Are you talking about
Yeah,
in
4th
an
of July.
inner tube or in a kayak or?
Pages in a tube, apparently.
me too.
I mean, we don't have to do that, but I
No,
can consider it.
I like
Let's
this
give up
idea.
Benny.
It's like seeing this from a different viewpoint. Yeah, I think that's gonna be super fun.
What a fringe benefit of being on this board, huh?
Yeah.
Are there any other topics that people don't see on here that they would like us to consider? I mean, you'll notice, and which I appreciate, we kept the recreation library culture initiative, so we can check on that at every meeting. And then is that, so there's a master planning update in March. And then
Kids
follow up
also.
in May.
Forever after.
Anything else?
Okay, yeah, that's for.
If not, I would move that we approve the agenda. The advisor, the calendar.
I move that we approve the calendar for 2023 Parks and Recreation Advisory Board as written.
I second.
All those in favor? Yay, we're unanimous.
I'm so proud of us for not being unanimous on something that I gotta tell you.
Okay, discuss items from the packet updates. Does anyone have questions from the items that were included in the packet?
I do. Like, we can go to like ecosystem management and open space and stuff now? Is this what we're talking about? Number 8 on ecosystem management and open space. What's the prairie dog management at McLaughlin look like, and what's the purpose? Thanks.
Yeah,
man, I can answer that. Blackman,
Yeah.
how was that?
So that's a property that we purchased really for increasing city's ownership around
That raptor
Clover
area.
Clover
Basin
Reservoir. And we did that in conjunction with Boulder County. There's also neighbors out there. So we try to manage those properties in a way that kind of meets the ecological needs of the property, but also be respectful of the neighbors too. So we have an obligation to take care of some of the prairie dogs and manage those on that property. So I don't see us getting rid of all the prairie dogs out there. We definitely have raptors out there as a small, fairly intact area, but it's also a pretty small footprint. So we try to manage those prairie dogs in ways they don't constantly push the fences and move over onto neighboring properties.
I'm happy to answer that question only because of my
She may not
involvement
know
in the
her
acquisition
name.
and the management.
I do, Jim was around when I.
Oh, you were, okay,
Yeah.
alright,
Yeah.
I wasn't
Tom
sure.
doesn't though.
Do we
No,
have,
so
do we have to pay him for
Dan,
this?
I live at
Do we have to
1815,
pay
citizen
for
of the
this?
public, citizen, yeah,
Yeah.
1815 Third Avenue, so,
And please
recent-
describe your
right,
past history with this
right,
board.
past history, worked 22 years as the open space manager for the city of Longmont, and just recently retired in October, so.
Not very well.
Worked very closely. Yeah.
He used to, until a couple months ago, he sat on that side of the table.
Yeah. So if you're familiar with the McLaughlin property, you know, there's the entry road that comes in off, I believe that's 65th Avenue. And basically, that's where the separation is between Prairie Dog Management. So everything to the north of that road, were, you know, had been trying to keep dogs out of that area. Everything to the south to Nelson Road, that is, again, as David said, it's quite a lovely place from a wildlife perspective, waterfowl and raptor perspective, and certainly the prairie dogs are an important aspect of that ecosystem. So, you know, the team is working primarily to, and we've actually tried to get an agricultural lease on everything to the north side of that asphalt road. It'd be nice to, you know, bring a Google. Steve, could you do that one? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I could bring it up because that's what I looked it up on
You know,
earlier today.
So there is that entryway, you know, but again, with the intent of trying to keep that northern portion of the property in an agricultural use, and more of a hay grazing, more like a hay production, you know, on that, and then everything to the south of that road, trying to use some of the natural barriers as well as that road as that barrier that cuts off between Prairie Dog Management, you know, to the north versus the south.
So have neighbors mentioned that they don't want prairie dogs?
Definitely. From
Absolutely.
the time we purchased
Right,
that property.
from day one.
Actually, prior to purchasing that property, we were working with the neighbors that had concerns about us managing that property and trying to be good neighbors.
So the management would be erecting a prairie dog, or installing a prairie dog barrier fence to keep prairie dogs out of their
No,
area.
we usually do, we're probably not gonna do fences at this point, those are things we do, we have done in the past, we've worked with neighbors to, share the cost, and then we've done volunteer projects, we have had staff in and install those, but typically if we can keep enough forage on one side of the area, like Dan said, using natural things like roads to say, we're gonna keep this down here with forage and keep that more natural, and on the other side, then we do use the carbon monoxide machine to treat prairie dogs that go to the north of that. And again, just trying to keep that population as balanced as possible, using the natural ecosystem out there, but at times we have to step in and help manage that.
I mean, it seems like that's a pretty big expense. Have we thought about educating people on the benefits of prairie dogs in their pasture land? Because that is documented as opposed to the
Yeah, we
old
have-
wives' tale of my horse is gonna fall in the hole.
It really is not, it really is the fact that those prairie dogs eat the same things that the ranchers are trying to raise for their forage crop too. So there really is, I mean, myself and Dan have been having these conversations with local neighbors for 25, 30 years. And there's, I think, a place we've gotten to that they recognize that we're not going to go through and euthanize all the prairie dogs on the adjacent land. And at one point, that's probably what everyone would want to see us do. So I think that piece now is just the education that we are going to have prairie dogs that meet those ecological needs on these properties. We'll try to be a good neighbor and, you know, keep as many on our side as possible. There's a point where they're responsible for the property too. But we have looked at fencing, and that's you talk about expense. The fencing is very expensive too, and it doesn't always work.
Oh, I know.
They go under, they go over.
So $25 a foot. Offensive. Yeah.
Other questions from the packet? Dan and Scott?
Steve, how's this new design build thing? I saw you mentioned I know you can't give us maybe details, but are you feeling good, or is it a whole disaster, or how you doing?
No, it's not a disaster. We did fail. We received we received submittals for design build work for Clover Meadows and Fox Meadows. We received one submittal that basically was a person that said they could build fence if we wanted to. That didn't really help us much. So our procurement manager, Valerie Scott, reached out to potential clients, got some feedback. We actually had a meeting today with David and Joni Marsh, our deputy city manager, and we are going to put it back out with updated cost estimates. Contractors thought our costs were too low. We are, if you guys noticed at City Council this past Tuesday, there was a presentation on increased costs on all sorts of capital projects, transportation, the Nelson Flanders water plant, everything is we're seeing unprecedented cost increases. So we're going to increase the costs that we have for those two parks, and we're actually going to be adding the Dry Creek Fields transition from turf to synthetic turf to that design build project to make it closer to about 10 million, to make it more attractive for some of those larger firms rather than the 3 million we went with before. So I'm not sure if David mentioned, we have hired someone who's going to be starting here at the end of the month to fill. Oh, go ahead. No, that's good. Go ahead. To fill Kathy's position, so there'll be someone else to help with project management, in addition to Danielle and I. And so we hope to have that out on the streets by the end of next week. With purchasing, it'll be a shortened period because we've already educated a lot of the potential vendors about 2 of the 3 projects. So that's the plan, and hopefully I'll have more of an update when March comes. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, you said February 2, and I'm like, oh, wonder what happened.
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up.
No, because this is a big thing for all of us, I mean, for this whole system, so yeah.
And I think it's a big thing, staff, Harold, and
Right.
council members, so I think, that's the piece too, that, Steve mentioned we failed, but again, it's not a fail, we're starting over, we're gonna figure out.
Well, this is the
we
first
talked
time,
to our
so
we talked
it's
to
a
our
new world,
vendors,
yeah.
we talked to our vendors locally, they were very open with their comments, and we're going to give it another try.
We estimated Nino Gallo Park costing about 2.5 million. My cost estimate right now, when I'm at about 100% design, is 5.2 million.
Wow.
So that's a big difference. It just took the 2 digits. So,
and that's, if people watch council, was it just last week?
Tuesday.
Yeah, it was last Tuesday. That's really what all of our kind of larger CIP project managers kind of went forward and talked about. That's what we're just seeing across the board as far as these increases, and especially when a lot of those projects were designed years before this. So we had this sort of, let's have 2% inflator on it, and it just doesn't work anymore.
Thanks. I have one other question. May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ben, I saw lots of numbers. It looks like we're doing great in the rec center. Give me are we back to pre-COVID, or are we,
So
how are we doing? Budget,
I don't want to screw up next month, because that's what I really wanted to show all that stuff.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So
No big
that's,
reveals.
we wanted to put all that together, right? We talked about that, but, January looked really good. It was a very good month. It exceeded January of 20, which was an excellent month. January and February of 20, we were killing it. We were looking great. Revenue numbers, participation numbers, and then of course March of 20 hit.
Right.
And that exceeded 19. And January of this year exceeded 19 by $100,000 and 20 by $50,000. So that's a really nice start. Now, a lot of passes get sold in January because our fees did go up February 1st. So you get a bump of fees, but a few less passes. It'll be interesting to see. It's February. I'm really interested in seeing these 2 months, but we're coming around to our new normal, I believe.
And I saw you had some hires. Is that almost normal yet? I mean, we were starving for people.
I don't know, I've been here since '07, I don't think we've ever been normal. But
Okay.
we've been on a really nice, small reorganization within aquatics, we've got positions posted, therapeutic recreation, that position's posted. We're coming around, it's coming around.
Maybe it's the new top management for recreation.
I don't know.
That's
anything
got
about
it.
that. That's what it is. I don't know anything about that.
Thank you.
There's still nobody running the climbing wall every time I go to that sign.
Yep.
That got
It's
mentioned,
coming
that they're
around.
still looking. I
Yeah.
saw that in there.
Yeah.
Just not getting applicants.
Really?
Wow.
We're calling the high schools and calling the climbing gyms and it's, yeah, and it's not, I mean, if you're a climber, it's not like a huge certification like with like being a lifeguard, so it's a little surprising that it's been this hard. Did get babysitting going though, fine.
Is there a question for an update on the pricing with union rents? Are we expected to see that come back or?
Yep, probably May, we're gonna take a different approach with that.
Okay, so, like permits and things, it's gonna be held off till May then?
Yes.
Okay.
And done as part of the 2024 budget process.
I have a couple other little questions in here. The New Zealand mud snail looks a little alarming and, oh, thank you. And there's no effective controls and I wanna know how far it's moved up the creek. And, you know, is it gonna be in Button Rock soon? And, also, can we supply brushes, like the foot cleaners and interp on why you wanna use that? On those to help people not spread them?
So I think a couple pieces there. So the big places that we really get concerned about are our Union Reservoir at this point. That's the place where we have the most activity. So we do have dollars that come in from Water Resources, and all the rangers and the gate attendants have been trained in how to assess vehicles that are coming in and vessels that are coming in to see if they have potential water in their motors or their boats that would pose a threat. They have to go through and then do a decontamination if they don't. We're buying some new equipment for that actually. Working very closely with state parks on that training, but also there's tagging programs. So if they come from waters where there were no mussels, they tag those, we can bring those directly in. We have our boat storage there. In the creek though, it's a lot more challenging because we don't have that point of access. So it's just people coming in and out. So I think your idea of how do you help better educate people with all those points is something that I don't know how we manage all of that, but I think as far as places like maybe Dickens Park,
Yeah.
that's the spot where you may be able to do some of those.
Dickens, I'd say Dickens up by Golden Ponds, I'd say, Rogers Grove, say those places. Cause I mean, this isn't the zebra mussel, everybody knows about the zebra mussel. We've had a really good
Right.
education and, you know, nationwide campaign, but this is the mud snail and it's on my shoes.
Yeah.
So if I'm not a boater, I've ignored all that. And, you know, if you're a mom that tromps with your kids' Crocs, you know,
Right.
here and there, people don't wanna mess up our ecosystem. So if we could have that, like in our creaky parks,
Yep.
I think that would be good. And have the shoe brushes. In fact, you know what? Moms want those shoe brushes anyway. Right? I think that's not a big investment if we go back to that.
So I just wanna do a time check for you, it's 8:20, generally, if we wanna go past 8:30, we need to vote to go past 8:30. So, just wanna see where people are.
I have an item from the board when it comes to that time, so I don't know if it's more than,
Okay,
it's
well,
not
why
more
don't
than 10
we,
minutes.
do we wanna vote to go till, 8:45?
Sure.
Somebody
I move that we go to 8:45 if we need to.
All in favor? Alright. Okay, are we good with items from the packet? Any other items from staff?
I will just echo Steve, we did have a good candidate, that we actually offered a position for to fill the existing vacant, FT position that Kathy Cron was filling, so, that will be some help as we're moving forward trying to get these projects done, so looking forward to having her come on. She comes with a, does not have the landscape architecture, but she is an architect, she's been working in the, hospital environment, she's working for Children's Hospital right now as an architect, and been working on projects for them for quite a while, so.
And are you going on a dance position?
So-
Did you do that?
We are still in the process of what we're looking at doing, as we look at HR and Joni, is to really split that position. Dan came in really as an open space manager and took on a whole lot of other land management for the whole city. So what we're looking at doing is splitting off the land management piece and then having that as one position, and then really an open space piece that really deals with the acquisitions, the conservation easement, writing and management plans, working on grants to do that, the regional trail connections, to really have kind of two separate skill sets that a lot of people have that Dan kind of, was able to bring that position, but also to grow it. So we are looking at moving forward to advertise those as two separate positions.
Okay, items from the board.
I have a question about shoveling tennis courts and pickleball courts. And in particular, Scott Hempel, the head of the LTA, sent out an email to the whole LTA folks saying, don't shovel, because you'll ruin the courts.
True fact.
When I go by the pickleball courts in Hoover Park, they are shoveled very nicely. And I don't know if it should be, is it a city policy? Was it an LTA policy? Do we need to, I mean, it's kind of late in the season to worry about this. I know there is damage on tennis courts from, somebody took a friggin' snowblower once. I mean, on the one hand, I get it, people want to recreate. On the other hand, I don't want to pay as a citizen for resurfacing courts. And so what's the policy, or is there a policy?
You want to start with that, and I'll add what my staff maybe has contributed to that conversation.
You go.
Yeah, so I think, what we really have told the pickleball community that plastic shovels and even snow blowers with rubber blades, we're not going to say anything about that. The pickleball community recognizes once you start saying you can shovel, you see the damage, people come out with,
Say that again, you don't mind plastic things?
Plastic shovels and even snow blowers with rubber blades. We have told the pickleball community are
Interesting, because tennis LTA guy says, don't use plastic. He says nothing except a broom. So I don't know where he's getting this, I assume
and that may be
from
something
you
we want
guys.
to talk about too, as far as.
Do we need a policy, or do we have one, or post it better?
Well, our policy in recreation's been, you can use it when the snow's gone.
Okay,
And that's why I want to say
And
that.
city staff does not remove snow from courts.
I knew that part. Well, there's a beautifully berm of snow all around the pickleball court, and they're full of people playing. So it's hard to argue with people recreating. On the other hand, when they come begging for new courts in a year, what do you tell them? That kind of thing. So maybe more signage, one way or the other, whatever it is. Oh, shoot. I hate to say padlocks, that just sounds icky. We did that in COVID, right? Did we ever do that in ours, in Longmont? Did we lock the doors?
Yeah,
we did.
yes.
Yep. Okay, just a thought to be consistent. Now that we have new pickleball courts.
I can tell you, Dan, that there's been a long-term relationship between LTA and city parks and recreation. The pickleball community is less organized and is much newer, and so that level of communication probably hasn't been there. Putting the fear of God in them, like we
They're
did
gung
LTA.
hoer. Maybe they're gung hoer.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I think that we could probably do a better job reaching out to the pickleball
Okay.
community about that.
Yeah.
Well, there's another piece of that where there's a financial relationship between LTA and the city also.
Oh, true.
That now as that evolves in pickleball, and it is, that will, you get a little more teeth.
Yeah, and their organization can talk to their people without just like Scott did to the LTA. Yeah, you don't have to be involved. Okay, that all makes sense. Thanks.
Rhythm on the River is moving to Roosevelt in the summer, going to the fall, is that what's going on?
We are
at the final moment of saying yes, that it is going to move to a fall date, proposing September 16th. Telling you, we're planning on September 16th right now. We have something next month, again, official to talk about with that. But due to concerns from Harold about police commitments and the heat that's in the summer and the dust that's in the summer, so we're gonna make a change. And
Does that mean it's gonna be 100 in September now?
It will be.
Oh, and 100 for rhythm,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it will be anyway.
The week of the 10-year anniversary of the flood, so
Yes.
who knows what we'll get. And we're looking at it being a one-day event, and we'll get at Roosevelt. As the larger events at Roosevelt have moved on, i.e. the left-hand events, we feel like it'll be a good location.
Is there a new name?
Isn't that Roosevelt? Forget it.
But there wasn't any requirement, I thought there was a requirement for like that whole area to do some sort of celebration. Like,
Well,
that was the genesis of Rhythm on the
Yes,
River.
there's some, well, I don't know about
Is
the
there a
genesis.
requirement to do an event there?
At
Yeah,
Rogers
there's
Grove?
Rogers Grove, that
There
they
is.
had some sort of.
There's a donation that we received, based on doing something there, and we're still gonna have a race at that period. And that relationship may change.
Scott does bring up a point though, the Roberta Roger Jones donation for Rogers Grove did have some stipulations about continuing education. That we should
Right,
probably
and
look at, I don't know what they are.
But
offhand.
when Sue Jacobson was here, they were talking about they were almost out of money at that time. And so.
The Jones Foundation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they had said.
Oh.
We are working with them to see what their thoughts are, and we'll do things appropriately. If we have to do some smaller event in Rogers Grove during the summer, we'll do that.
We have a brand new demonstration garden that's being finished there.
I was just gonna ask about that.
And so
Yeah.
that's the same sort of thing. That's the
Yeah,
same thing we're gonna get to. An event around that and you've done your due diligence.
Well, and we will be doing a race, on the same evening that we've done the, Rogers River Run, every year with Rhythm on the River. So, and we're gonna build that up, so it's not just the race as a part of that, we're gonna make the race into more of an event now that we can have more staff focus on it, so.
Do you wanna add something?
Yeah. Again, with a little bit of history on this property, remember that the management agreement and the conservation easement with Boulder County, because of the joint acquisitions and transitions of properties, it's limited to a certain number of recreation, which included in the statement, Rhythm on the River. So it doesn't limit it, doesn't require so much has to be done, but it is limited with the approval from Boulder County.
Yeah, it's a different lens, but yes.
What have our numbers been for attendance for Rhythm on the River? Cause I just noticed, and maybe it's just when I go, that they seem to have gone down quite a bit from when I first moved to Longmont.
That would not be our impression at all.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I think our last one, we believe to be the highest attended one that we've had.
Okay.
So, because we
You picked
only.
the right time to go.
Yeah. I mean, I always would miss, it would always be.
There was a change, and we changed to nighttime rather than all day, so it condensed it a little. So at that point, we may have lost some during the day or gained some at night. But over the last, two of 19 and then now COVID. But the last one certainly, we've never had to expand into the auxiliary parking lots at the fairgrounds, and now we do. Now it's just, we plan on it, but we have planned on it now, so. You think the changes we've made with stage, opening it up, not having a tent, have really expanded, people coming, so. So that's our, that we don't have a counter on it, but everything we see tells us that numbers are probably strong as ever, stronger than ever.
Would that have the potential of taxing city resources with Dia de los Muertos? Because
Or
it gets.
it's not a recreation event.
No,
It's a community
but it's
event.
still-
No, it's
but-
soon enough though that shouldn't impact it.
You don't, I mean, because at one point in time, when I worked for the city, I had to work Rhythm on the River. But
It's in your
I worked for the
engagement letter
museum
to
and it
come
was,
to work.
but nobody was coming to, there wasn't the reciprocal coming to work on Dia de los Muertos, which has now become, enormous and is just become like the showpiece, so that's what I was.
Well, we see, that's a part of the reason we're changing it, is that we're going from a 2-day event to one.
Okay.
We're looking, well, from recreation, we're at the event for the whole time.
Yeah.
Every day. And so we're looking at possibly a split day within recreation, and that can be hashed out even smaller. The commitment to this event will be, in general, a little bit smaller, the footprint's smaller. So
That's kind of what I was looking for, cause like, it just seemed like
just
a
the
lot.
footprint's smaller.
Just seemed like a lot, yeah. So.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. I spent a lot of time out there.
Any other items from the board? We only went 2 minutes over our time.
That's what Scott said, once we pass
I
that.
know.
We're out of here.
All right, if we're ready to adjourn, I could take a motion to.
I move we adjourn.
These are not public invited to be heard.
Oh.
Oh, we don't usually do we still do it at the end?
No, it's usually just the first one.
You missed out, sorry.
I mean, I'll let you talk.
Do you want to share something?
I just want to make certain that the park board knows that Kids Fishing Inc. is working with Recreation and the Natural Resources Work Group to put on probably the 20th Chick Hunt program on March 18th. And, it'll be interesting as, again, with the challenges for COVID, to bring that program back. And we're working with the Optimist Club and Rotary and scouting troops and that kind of stuff. Likely, I believe it was in today's paper, the notification in today's paper that we'll be pulling off the sessions with approximately 160 kids. So I'm kind of working that liaison between Kids Fishing Inc. and the city to make sure.
And again, I will give Dan a lot of credit for that, because there was a lot of change over now with his position, but also in our external sponsors for that, they had turnover too, so there was a lot of loss of connection out there. So Dan has been having a hard time retiring with that one. So he's done a great job, really make sure that kept going, because there really was no resources internally.
And for those board members that don't know, this is a fishing education program that we put on the first Saturday of spring break, that the kids go through an education session with a variety of fish ID, how to tie knots, different rods and reels, casting, and then they come up and we provide them rods and reels from the Division of Wildlife. They fish all week. We stock, CPW stocks the pond the week before, in addition to about $3,000 worth of fish from Kids Fishing Inc. It's a great event. We go through about 600 hot dogs. We have used if you figure that for the past 20 years we've done this, somewhere between 250 to 300 rods and reels that are going to kids in the community, that's a pretty significant impact. So we would really like to see this program continue outside of COVID.
It always seemed to sell out.
Oh, yeah. We typically, it takes like 2 weeks to fill those gaps. So much appreciation to the Natural Resources team and the Recreation staff to, making this a successful community program.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. We need a second.
I second.
All right, all those in favor?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Meeting's adjourned.
What about you, Adam?